Something happened in Minneapolis that most Americans still don't fully understand. Overnight, neighborhoods went silent. They went quiet. Businesses closed early. Streets that were once packed suddenly fell empty, and phones stopped ringing. Doors stopped opening, and the media, they rushed to tell you that this was all hysteria, that nothing was really happening. But here's the problem, folks. People don't just vanish unless they're responding to something real. What you're witnessing today isn't chaos, it's reaction. Because while the headlines focused on protests and panic, the federal government was already moving quietly, deliberately under President Donald J. Trump, targeted enforcement, existing case files, names already flagged. And when federal agents were surrounded in Minneapolis, when local police stood down instead of stepping in, that is when this crossed the line. That is when phase one ended. And now comes phase two. So the DOJ isn't just asking who's here legally anymore. They're asking how some people became citizens in the first place. They're reopening files that were assumed to be closed forever. Naturalization chains, missing paperwork, fraud that didn't just cost money, but compromised the system itself. And behind the scenes, whistleblowers are going silent. Tips are being buried. Cities are refusing to cooperate because when the spotlight turns from deportation to citizenship, the stakes change completely. Well, tonight we're breaking down why Minneapolis went dark, why sanctuary cities are cracking, and why this story is far bigger than anyone wants to admit. Stick with me, guys, because this is where the truth starts getting a little uncomfortable. Hit the like button and subscribe. All right, so people outside Minneapolis, they think vanished overnight is just a dramatic line. But locals, they're describing something colder, normal streets, then sudden absence. Shops near the Carmel Mall closed hours early. Barbershops kept the lights on, but the chairs stayed empty. Restaurant phones rang and rang and rang. No one answered the phones. Families canceled appointments, kids were pulled from routines, and ride shares suddenly showed unavailable. Even the loudest social feeds went silent at the exact same time. Now, this is not a protest. That's preparation. In tight communities, the first sign is not a headline, it's behavior. People didn't leave town. They withdrew from visibility. They stayed inside. They avoided cameras. They skipped work. Because people don't disappear over rumors. They disappear when someone believes that the list already exists. There were no marches, no speeches, just locked doors and curtains drawn. The silence was the alarm bell, and it echoed everywhere. Now, under President Donald J. Trump, on December 19th, 2025, what Minnesota actually saw wasn't some random sweep. This was a targeted enforcement. In the transcript, ICE actually says that agents were conducting a targeted vehicle stop when a crowd swarmed them, forcing a frantic call for help. Now, that detail right there matters, guys. Targeted means files exist. Names are already flagged, locations are already mapped, and this is why the vanishing looks so coordinated, because people sense when the government is hunting broadly versus hunting precisely. A raid is loud. A dragnet is quiet until it snaps shut. Even the conflict near the Carmel Mall reinforced it. ICE wasn't wandering, they were working in operation, and they had to fight their way out. So media voices, they tried to wave it off as nothing. But if it were nothing, nobody would be racing to disengage, lawyer up, and disappear. So ask yourself, who's on it? I'm going to be checking in the comments to see if anyone has listed Ilhan Omar or Ilhan Omar as a member on that list. Now, everything changed the night that federal agents were surrounded in South Minneapolis, okay? This was not a peaceful demonstration or symbolic protest in the least bit. Witnesses described crowds closing in, officers calling for backup, and chemical agents deployed because control was slipping. That moment mattered legally. You see, when federal officers are obstructed while enforcing U.S. law, reports are triggered, jurisdictions are flagged, and oversight escalates immediately, or at least automatically. And that's not politics, that's procedure. The transcripts makes clear that agents believe that they were under threat, which transforms a local disturbance into a federal incident. Now, from that night forward, Minnesota was no longer just a headline. It became a case file. Once a confrontation crosses that line, Washington does not forget it. It documents it, it tracks it, and it adjusts strategy accordingly. That confrontation right there signaled enforcement would no longer stay quiet, and resistance itself would invite scrutiny nationwide. Now, what we're talking about right now is uncertainty, and uncertainty is completely dangerous, especially when it hits you at the worst possible time. Now, one of our viewers told me something that really stuck with me. She said, "My treatment was covered, but the follow-up visit, I didn't know about that." No warning, no heads up, just a bill right when she was already vulnerable. Now, this is how people get hurt, not because they ignored the rules, but because nobody explained them. This is why I partner with Chapter. They look at every angle of your Medicare coverage before problems show up. They explain what's covered, what isn't, and where people usually get blindsided. So that way you're not finding out after it's too late. Now, most people watching this, they're already calling the phone number at the bottom of your screen, completely free, 909-563-8279. And tell my friends over at Chapter that Ron says hello. Or they're visiting the link in the description down below to make sure that their coverage actually protects them. All right, so let's get back to it, guys, because what happened next, this is where the story really turns. All right, so after the confrontation, local law enforcement arrived and they disengaged, not because nothing happened, but because policy told them to step back. You see, Minneapolis did not just claim sanctuary status. It enforces it in real time. Officers separated crowds, ensured no immediate violence, and then withdrew, leaving federal agents to resolve the situation alone. That decision matters. You see, when local police decline to assist federal enforcement, responsibility does not vanish. It shifts upward. Sanctuary policies do not block enforcement. They reroute it. Washington takes note. They take note when cooperation collapses on the ground. Reports are written. Strategies change. Trust fractures between agencies. The transcript shows this moment clearly. Federal agents asked for help, and then help was limited. That stand down transformed a city policy into a federal concern, accelerating oversight and inviting stronger, more centralized action. The message was unmistakable, and it reverberated far beyond Minneapolis overnight. Now, Minneapolis didn't just go quiet because of protests. It went quiet because of anticipation. In close communities, information moves through texts, calls, and sudden schedule changes, not press conferences. So when one shot closes early, it's a coincidence. But when 10 do it the same night, it's a signal. Parents keep kids home, appointments get canceled, ride requests disappear, people avoid well-lit places and cameras. That behavior reflects belief, not rumor. Belief that enforcement isn't finished. This is belief that more names are coming up. Silence becomes a strategy because attention invites questions. No chance, no signs, just absence. That absence spreads faster than fear because it looks rational. Minneapolis, after dark, wasn't confused, it was calculating. Communities weren't trying to make a statement, they were trying to buy time. And when an area withdraws at once, it tells you that the message traveled and that the message was thoroughly understood. Now, phase 2 didn't announce itself with sirens. It arrived with paperwork. After the dragnet, the DOJ quietly expanded citizenship reviews connected to existing fraud cases. Now, this wasn't mass punishment. It was file-by-file examination, naturalization chains, missing documents, false statements, and derivative claims tied to earlier approvals. Reviews focus on legality, not identity. That distinction matters. Deportation threatens presence. Citizenship reviews threatens permanence. People who believe that their status was settled, they began calling attorneys and gathering records and staying out of sight. Panic didn't look like chaos. It looked like silence. There were no rallies, no slogans, just preparation. So when a government revisits citizenship, the stakes rise instantly because reversal carries consequences that can't be undone easily. The dragnet opened the door, the review decides what happens next, and that reality is exactly why the quiet deepened across Minneapolis after months of ignored warnings and tips. So citizenship feels permanent because most people are never told otherwise. But under US law, denaturalization has always existed. So if citizenship was obtained through fraud, false statements, or invalid paperwork earlier in the process, it can be revoked, and that can happen even decades later. This isn't a new power created under President Trump. It's an old statute being enforced again. Courts have consistently held that fraud unravels status from the start. So if a parent's naturalization was invalid, derivative citizenship can fall right along with it. Now, if material facts were concealed or misrepresented, the approval doesn't stand. This is why this phase is so unsettling. People didn't just build lives, they build certainty around paperwork that they believed was final. And so now archived files are being reopened. And when citizenship becomes conditional again, fear doesn't show up in public. It shows up in legal consultations, missing records, and sudden silence. And at the same time citizenship reviews expand, Another shift happens quietly inside the government. Whistleblowers stop talking, tips slow down, hotlines that once rang, they go silent. Not because fraud disappeared, but because fear took over. The transcript makes clear that insiders worry about retaliation and career damage and being left unprotected. So when fraud networks feel exposed, intimidation replaces confidence. Silence becomes a shield. This is the panic phase that the public never sees. No demonstrations, no speeches, just people inside agencies deciding that it's just safer to say nothing than to be the next target. And that silence right there protects wrongdoing, because fraud survives when insiders don't talk. When whistleblowers disappear at the same time, federal reviews intensify. This is not a coincidence. This is confirmation that the pressure is working and that the people who know the most are waiting to see who breaks first. Now, what ultimately forced federal intervention, it wasn't one scandal, it was repetition. Food assistance programs, SNAP, unemployment insurance, education funding, different agencies, same problem. Applications approved at scale, documentation barely checked, red flags ignored, money moved fast, oversight lagged, and recovery proved nearly impossible once the funds left the system. The transcript shows how tips piled up while investigations stalled, creating this backlog that states failed to confront. So this wasn't about blaming individuals. It was about identifying a pipeline that just kept paying out despite the warnings. And so when losses stack across programs, Washington doesn't step in for politics. It stepped in because the system's bleeding. Federal agencies inherit these failures reluctantly, but when states don't act, intervention becomes mandatory. The dragnet wasn't ideological, it was corrective. And once federal auditors see the same weaknesses repeated elsewhere, they don't isolate the problem, they expand the scope. And so as scrutiny intensified, leadership responses followed a similar rhythm. New controversies surfaced, emotional debates dominated headlines, timing mattered. So when accountability questions rose, attention shifted elsewhere. This isn't an accusation, this is a pattern. So rather than explain why tips weren't forwarded or audits delayed, the conversations, they pivoted to issues guaranteed to inflame public emotion. Outrage replaces answers, deflection buys time, but it doesn't stop the investigations. So while speeches fill the air, reviews, they quietly continue. Files move, requests are issued, and silence grows louder. The transcript highlights how rhetoric surged while substantive explanations lagged. That gap is revealing. You see, when leaders avoid specifics, this is often because specifics don't help them. Accountability doesn't need theatrics, it needs records. And records don't care about distractions. Eventually, attention returns to what was avoided. And when it does, the questions are sharper, the patience thinner, and the consequences harder to deflect. So this line right here has to be clear, because confusion is how accountability gets buried. This isn't about race. It's not about ethnicity. This is about targeting communities as a whole. So the overwhelming majority of immigrants follow the law. They work hard and they want stability. That's it. That's not being disputed here. But what is being disputed are the records, the applications, the statements that are being made under oath, documentation that either exists or it doesn't. Fraud thrives when scrutiny is reframed as bias because it shuts questions down before they're asked. That protects bad actors while leaving law-abiding immigrants exposed to the fallout. Accountability isn't persecution, it's protection. A system that refuses to check records eventually collapses, and when it does, everyone pays a price. The moral center here is very simple. Rules only mean something if they apply evenly. Records don't have identities. They either hold up or they don't. So this is the phase that most people misunderstand because it's quiet. After the vanishing comes the review. After the silence comes the paperwork. Audits expand, files are reopened, federal oversight deepens without announcements or spectacle. This is not a crackdown. This is a reckoning. Assumptions get tested. Systems are forced to answer for what they allowed and what they ignored. This is why everything feels calm right now. Calm isn't resolution, it's processing. The most consequential actions don't come with sirens. They come with letters, requests, and deadlines. Minneapolis, they went dark first, but then the records lit up. And what follows won't be dramatic, but it will be permanent, because once the review phase begins, it doesn't reverse itself quietly. The vanishing was the warning. The reckoning is the outcome.